The whispers began the night I spoke the forbidden words from the book I found in my grandmother's attic. The attic itself was an unsettling place, cluttered with relics of a bygone era, its air heavy with the scent of dust and decay. Among the piles of yellowed newspapers and tarnished trinkets, I found it. A black leather-bound tome with strange, indecipherable symbols etched into its cover. I wasn't particularly superstitious, but something about the book unsettled me. The leather felt unnaturally cold under my fingertips, and as I flipped through its brittle pages, I noticed diagrams of pentagrams, demonic faces, and what appeared to be ritual instructions. Toward the back of the book, scrawled in jagged handwriting, was a single sentence in English: "Speak to me, and I will grant you what you desire." At the time, I thought it was nothing more than a creepy novelty item, but its words lingered in my mind. That night, unable to sleep, I sat in my dimly lit living room with the book on the table in front of me. I felt compelled to read the sentence aloud. My voice trembled as I whispered the words, half expecting nothing to happen. Instead, the air grew cold. The flickering light of the single candle on the table stretched, casting shadows that writhed and shifted unnaturally. Then I heard it, a guttural voice, low and resonant, that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You called me." I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. The candle snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, its faint glow casting weak light around me, but the voice continued. "What do you desire, mortal? Speak." Panic overtook me, and I slammed the book shut. The room grew still, the voice fading into silence. I laughed nervously, brushing it off as a trick of the mind. But deep down, I knew something had changed. The next morning, I woke to find the book open on my nightstand, its pages turned to the diagrams of a summoning ritual. My heart raced as I remembered shutting it the night before and leaving it in the living room. I shoved it into a box and stuffed it into the back of my closet, determined to forget about it. But the whispers didn't stop. At first, they were faint, like a breeze carrying indecipherable murmurs. But as days passed, they grew louder, clearer. I could hear them even in crowded places, their guttural tones crawling into my ears no matter how much noise surrounded me. They spoke of power, promises, and pain. Worst of all, they called me by name. On the fourth night, the possession began. I was brushing my teeth when my reflection in the bathroom mirror changed. My face remained, but my eyes turned black, and a sinister smile spread across my lips, too wide to be natural. The reflection whispered, "Let me in." I stumbled back, shattering the mirror in my panic. Blood dripped from my hands where shards of glass had sliced my skin, but I barely felt the pain. I tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, but my reflection began appearing in every reflective surface: windows, screens, even the surface of water. Each time, it spoke the same words: "Let me in." The possession became physical a week later. It started with a crushing weight on my chest as I slept, followed by vivid nightmares of burning landscapes and grotesque figures clawing at me. I woke up gasping for air, my body drenched in sweat. But the worst was yet to come. One night, as I lay in bed, paralyzed by the weight on my chest, I felt my body move on its own. My fingers curled, my legs swung over the edge of the bed, and I stood up, my body a puppet controlled by invisible strings. My voice, though I wasn't speaking, echoed through the room. "I am here." The following days were a blur of terror. I lost time, hours, sometimes entire nights. I'd wake up in strange places, my hands smeared with dirt or ash, my clothes torn. On one occasion, I woke in the woods miles from my apartment, a circle of dead animals surrounding me. Scratched into the dirt was the same phrase. Mine now. Desperate, I sought help. I visited priests, spiritual healers, and even skeptical psychiatrists. But nothing worked. The whispers only grew louder, their promises turning to threats. One night, as I sat in the middle of my apartment, clutching a rosary, the room erupted in chaos. Furniture toppled, windows shattered, and the shadows congealed into a monstrous figure with glowing red eyes and jagged teeth. "You cannot run," it growled, its voice shaking the walls. "You opened the door. Now you are mine." I screamed, the sound raw and primal, as the figure lunged at me. Its hands, long and clawed, gripped my throat, and for a moment, I felt myself slipping away, my soul being dragged into the void. But then I remembered the book. Using what little strength I had left, I reached for the closet and pulled the book from its hiding place. The creature recoiled, hissing, as I flipped through its pages. In the back, I found a passage titled Reversal. It was written in the same jagged script and required a sacrifice. The instructions were clear: burn the book and offer something of equal value to what had been taken. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had to offer a piece of myself. That night, I performed the ritual. The book burned with an unnatural fire, the flames black and cold. As I whispered the incantation, the whispers screamed, their guttural tones turning to agonized wails. The shadows writhed and dissolved, and the weight on my chest lifted, but the cost was high. I lost a part of my mind that night. My memories are fragmented, and I'm plagued by nightmares of the creature's eyes staring into my soul. Though the possession ended, I am not free. The whispers are gone, but I can still feel its presence lurking in the corners of my mind, waiting. If you find the book, burn it immediately. Don't make the same mistake I did. It began innocently. I was staying at my grandparents' home during the summer break, an old farmhouse tucked away in the countryside. The place was quaint, with creaky floorboards and the faint scent of lavender in the air. The first night, I noticed something strange in the mirror of my room, a fleeting smile that didn't belong to me. At first, I thought it was my imagination, a trick of the dim lighting. But as days passed, the smile became clearer and more sinister. It wasn't just in the mirror anymore. I saw it in windows, in the reflection of my phone screen, even in the pond at the back of the house. One night, I woke up abruptly, my heart pounding. A faint giggle echoed through the room, light and mocking. I sat up, my eyes darting to the mirror. There it was, a figure standing just behind me, grinning unnaturally wide. Its eyes were hollow, and its smile stretched far too much for any human face. I froze, my body refusing to move. The figure leaned closer, and I could feel cold breath on my neck. "Don't worry," it whispered. "I'm just here to make you smile." Over the next week, I felt like a prisoner in my own body. My face would involuntarily twist into a grin that wasn't mine. My reflection mocked me, smiling when I wasn't. I tried to tell my grandparents, but they dismissed it as stress or an overactive imagination. One evening, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, unable to move. The smiling figure appeared again, this time reaching out from the glass. Its hands emerged, gripping my shoulders. "You'll love this," it hissed. I blacked out. When I woke up, my hands were covered in dirt, and I was standing in the backyard, next to a freshly dug hole. I knew I had to act. Researching the local area, I discovered an old legend about a smiling spirit that once haunted the region. The spirit was said to be the soul of a woman who died in anguish, betrayed by her lover. Her smile, forced in life, became her curse in death. A local historian mentioned that the spirit could be banished by breaking a mirror under moonlight. That night, I gathered every ounce of courage and smashed the mirror in my room. As the shards scattered, the figure screamed, its grin finally fading. Though I escaped that house, the experience stayed with me. Sometimes, late at night, I catch glimpses of that smile, in car windows, puddles, or even people passing by. It's as if the spirit left a parting gift, a reminder that it could always return. My name is Jonathan, and I never believed in the supernatural. I always thought it was just something people made up, stories passed down through generations. That was until I encountered something I could not explain. It all started when I moved into an old house on the outskirts of town. It was a beautiful, decrepit mansion. Cracked walls, creaky floors, and an aura of age that felt suffocating. But I was drawn to it, as if something was calling me. The first few days were quiet, peaceful even. But then, on the fourth night, something happened. It was late, well after midnight, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I lived alone. My curiosity got the best of me, and I ventured out of bed to investigate. The footsteps grew louder, closer, but when I looked down the hall, there was no one there. The feeling of being watched crept up my spine. I brushed it off as my imagination, but that's when I saw it. The door to the basement was slightly ajar. I had never opened it myself, yet there it was, as if someone, or something, had been in and out. Against my better judgment, I ventured down the stairs. The basement was cold, musty, and dimly lit. The smell of mildew filled my nose as I walked deeper into the darkness. And that's when I saw it, a figure standing in the far corner of the room, cloaked in shadow. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then I heard it, a soft whisper. "You're not supposed to be here." I froze. The figure stepped forward, and I gasped in horror. It was a man, or at least what used to be one. His skin was deathly pale, his eyes sunken, and his mouth curled into a twisted smile. He wore an old priest's collar, but his face, it was no longer human. I tried to scream, but my voice was stolen from me. The figure stepped closer, and I backed up in terror, but there was nowhere to run. His presence felt like cold steel, oppressive and suffocating. I attempted to turn and flee, but I felt an unseen force gripping me, forcing me to kneel. His hollow eyes fixed on mine, and with a voice that was a whisper yet thunderous in my ears, he said, "You awakened me, boy." Before I could comprehend what he meant, I felt something inside me snap. A dark, cold force entered my chest, twisting and burning. My body began to convulse, my muscles strained as if they were being pulled in every direction. I couldn't control my own movements. It felt like something was clawing its way out of me, something ancient, something evil. I heard the priest's voice again, now louder and mocking. "You are mine now." I couldn't stop it. I couldn't fight it. The priest, or whatever it had become, began chanting in an ancient tongue, his voice wrapping around me like chains, binding me to his will. I felt my own consciousness slipping away, replaced by a dark, malevolent force. My body wasn't mine anymore. It was his vessel. For days, I fought. It was as if I was living in two worlds at once, my consciousness locked away, desperately trying to claw its way out, and the priest's evil spirit controlling every action, every breath I took. I would wake up in strange places, with no memory of how I got there. At times, I would find myself kneeling at strange altars, whispering prayers in the dead priest's voice. I couldn't stop it. The priest's influence over me grew stronger by the day. It whispered to me in the dark, taunting me with promises of power and immortality. He wanted me to join him, to give in to the darkness. But I resisted. I thought about ending it, about giving up and letting the darkness consume me completely. But some small part of me, refused to let go. The idea of being trapped forever in that hellish existence terrified me. One night, as I lay in bed, writhing under the weight of his control, I remembered something. The priest's body had been buried in the cemetery out back. I hadn't seen the grave, but I knew it was there, and I knew that if I could destroy his resting place, I could break the connection. With my body still under his control, I fought my way outside, staggering across the yard to the cemetery. I dug through the dirt with my bare hands, ignoring the pain and fatigue. When I reached the coffin, I opened it, revealing the priest's decayed form. I whispered an incantation, one I had read in an old book I had found in the basement. The words flowed out of me, no longer my own. The ground trembled as I chanted, and suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my chest. The spirit screamed in rage, but I didn't stop. In a final burst of will, I thrust the shovel into the priest's body, and a blinding light filled the air. The priest's spirit screeched, its grip on me breaking as the light engulfed him. When I woke up, I was in my bed, soaked in sweat and shaking. It was as if the nightmare had ended, but I knew better. The feeling of evil still lingered, faint but present. I rushed to the cemetery, but the grave was gone. The priest's body, once buried, was no longer there. I never found out who he was, but the priest's revenge had been thwarted. I was free, but I knew that the darkness never truly disappears. It waits, hidden, watching for the next person to awaken it.